Hi, this is Manoj. I'm a bit of an expert on the Second World War. My friends have been requesting me to provide a lecture on the Second World War focusing on the Eastern Front. The Eastern Front was the most active theatre of war in Second World War, although it is the least well known. But when I started thinking about it, I realized that we cannot have a talk on the Eastern Front without an introduction to the causes and the build up to the Second World War as well as the initial action on the Western Front. So, in the current lecture, I'll try to provide a bit of an overview of the Second World War with a focused Eastern Front lecture coming up later. The Second World War was the biggest and the bloodiest war in the history of the world, with close to 60 million people, including 20 million soldiers and 14 million civilians, getting killed. When we look at the genesis of Second World War, we have to go back all the way to the closing acts of the First World War itself. The First World War, as you may know, ended in 1918. It was called the War to End All Wars, and the League of Nations, a primitive form of the UN, was formed in 1920 with the same purpose. But alas, it was not to be. First World War ended in the Treaty of Versailles. In that, the victors, the British and the French, imposed severe conditions on the Germans. It included large-scale economic reparations, removal of control over a lot of land, and many other conditions. The German people by nature are proud and nationalistic, and this was utterly humiliating to them. Hitler was a soldier in the First World War. After the war, he formed a party which was more like a paramilitary organization which aimed to capture power through force, a bit like the Bolshevik in Russia. However, the German government imprisoned him and the other leaders and banned the party. Once Hitler got released, he converted his party into a normal political party and started participating in elections. But in the initial elections that he fought, his party was spectacularly unspectacular, winning only 1 or 2% votes. However, the world was going through a very tough phase. The Great Economic Depression, which started in the 20s with the stock market crash in New York, engulfed the whole world. The German economic situation, which was already bad because of the conditions of the Treaty of Versailles, became extremely difficult for the people. And this gave a flip to Hitler and his party. In 1933, he managed to rule Germany as a minority government. But he was smart. The same year, the German Reichstag, the parliament house, was burnt. Almost all historians believe that the Nazi party is behind it. But just like how in a road accident, the first person to accuse the other typically gets popular support, Hitler was very quick to blame the communists for it. He then banned communists and other parties and soon became the dictator of Germany. He started a very aggressive modernization of German army as well as its industry. He was also helped by the global political situation. In Britain, Neville Chamberlain promoted what was called an appeasement politics. It's a term that we very commonly hear nowadays. In this case, it was trying to appease Hitler. If Hitler is pushing for 10 things, his logic was that they can provide 2 and try to keep Hitler happy. But just like any negotiation with a blackmailer never works, this never worked with Hitler. He would take the 2 and keep pushing the boundaries. In 1938, Germany annexed Austria. However, this is not considered as the beginning of Second World War. That is because most of the Austrians wanted to merge with Germany. They shared a common history, common language, and were part of the old Prussian empires. Second World War is considered to have started in September 1939 when Germany attacked Poland. Poland was in alliance with the UK and France, and they declared war on Germany, and that is the start of the Second World War. However, for the next few months there was little action on the ground as both the sides tried to build up military for the war. Emboldened by the poor response from the Allies, Hitler went on to attack Denmark, Norway, and then Belgium in 1940. These are relatively small countries, and the German war machine overran them within days and weeks. Even then, most of the world expected France to be the bulwark on which Germans would stop. The French had built a series of strong fortifications known as the Maginot Line to stop Germans from advancing. In the past, the French have been a very strong army which has stopped many aggressors. But the beast that they faced in Hitler's Germany was quite different altogether. The mechanized forces, the tanks, the artillery, the command control, the close air support, in all of these, the German army was miles ahead of all other armies at that time. They attacked France in 2 ways. One, through the Ardennes forest, which was considered impregnable by the French army. They drove through Alps and through the forest almost entirely at night, with very little light for the front tank and absolutely no light for the other tanks. All the tanks had white patches on their backs, and the tank drivers were supposed to see the small reflection of those white patches and drive through the night. This completely bypassed the strong Maginot Line, and before they knew it, the Germans were outflanking the French army. One other major difference between the war on the Western Front, which is what we are talking about now, and on the Eastern Front was the way in which the defending armies reacted. On the Western Front, with respect to Poland, Denmark, Norway, or French, they looked at the situation in a normal sense and took decisions logically. So if a 100-member unit was facing a 1,000-member German unit, they surrendered. Or if a non-mechanized group, that is one without tanks, was facing a tank army, they surrendered. This was very different from what happened in the Eastern Front, which we will come to later, where people fought till the last man. So a 100-member unit would fight a 1,000-member unit and perish. But in the process, they will also kill probably 200 Germans and delay the advance by a day. This did not happen on the Western Front. Because of that, there was very little destruction in France, but within weeks, the once proud and strong French army completely capitulated. The British managed to rescue a good number of soldiers from France, from Dunkirk. But in 1940, Hitler was effectively in control of the whole of continental Europe. Britain, of course, being an island, was saved by the English Channel. What followed then was an air war called the Battle of Britain, where the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, tried to pound England into submission by raining bombs. It caused widespread destruction, of course, but Britain didn't surrender. By then, the political leadership had changed, and Winston Churchill was the PM. Winston Churchill, for many of his thoughts and deeds with respect to Indian freedom struggle and other opinions, should be criticized. However, he was indeed a fighter. He rallied his country, and his wartime speeches were pretty famous, especially the one in which he said, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender." So, with the continental Europe in his grasp, Hitler decided to turn his attention to the east, that is, to the USSR. This we will cover in the next lecture. But a few other interesting points. Who were the allies and Axis powers in Second World War? Mostly people know the Axis powers as Germany, Italy and Japan. By the way, the fascism originated in Italy, Mussolini's Italy. The word fascist or fascism comes from a term which means a bundle of sticks, which indicates the unity of people. Anyway, in addition to these three main countries, there were many others who joined probably because of ideology or because they wanted some spoils of the war. It may be a surprise that countries like Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Croatia, and even Thailand were part of the Axis powers. So Thailand was, along with Japan, fought in the war. On the Allies side, there were many small countries which contributed in various ways, but the most important ones were the USSR, the USA, the UK, China and France. It's no wonder that these are the permanent members of the Security Council of the UN. Now, which were the main theatres of war? The Second World War was fought on land, in the air, on sea and under the sea, because for the first time submarines or U-boats were used. The main theatres of war were, one, the Pacific. As you know, Japan attacked US, the Pearl Harbor attack and all the subsequent action was in Pacific. This included major confrontations like the Battle of the Coral Sea, the Battle of Midway, etc. Then the Battle of the Atlantic. This is where the Allies, mainly the British Navy, fought with Germans. Germany had major battleships, but their main strength was the U-boats or the submarines. There was war in Asia, where mainly Japan, with small assistance from Thailand, attacked and occupied most of China, Malaya, Singapore, Burma, and came even up to the borders of India. There was battle in Africa because most of these countries had colonies in Africa. This was battle royal indeed, with Erwin Rommel, the legendary German general who was called Desert Fox, fighting against General Montgomery of the British Army. But the most important and most decisive battles all happened in Europe. This is generally divided into the Eastern Front and the Western Front, as we mentioned. So, what is the importance of Eastern Front? When we look at the war, 3/4 of the action, both in terms of the number of soldiers, the weapons, the tanks, the loss of life, all of them happened in the Eastern Front, the war between Germany and its allies against the USSR. On the Western Front, only 1/4 of the war really took place. But because it happened to involve the English speaking countries, which had greater influence, we have read more about them in novels, stories, movies, etc. If you look at most of the famous war movies, be it Saving Private Ryan, Dunkirk, Patton, Longest Day, or even Casablanca, all of them refer to the battle on the Western Front. The only famous Hollywood movie about the battle on the Eastern Front is Enemy at the Gates, which is about the Battle of Stalingrad. It has a pretty good cast, including Joseph Fiennes, Jude Law, Ed Harris, Rachel Weisz, etc. Of course, there are a set of Russian movies like T-34, Panifov 28, etc., which talk about the Eastern Front. Now let's talk about the aftermath of Second World War. At the end of the war, the hegemony of the world passed on from the European powers like Britain, France, and Germany to the USA and the USSR. These countries, with huge land and natural resources and large populations, controlled the world. The rest of the countries aligned with them, with the US through NATO and with the USSR through Warsaw Pact. Of course, a few countries like India, when it got independence, tried to play the non-alignment game, albeit unsuccessfully. Unsuccessfully because for the first few decades of Indian independence, India really was a Soviet ally. The whole world map got redrawn, boundaries got redrawn, a lot of countries got split up, got added after the Second World War. Of course, Germany was split into East and West, with Berlin, the capital city itself, being divided into two. Israel was formed. It was as if the whole world was trying to atone for the sins of Hitler and the Nazis. Later, that led to the 6-month war and the 6-day war, etc., between Israel and its neighbors. Second World War also accelerated the decolonization of the world. India, with its freedom struggle led by Mahatma Gandhi, would have anyway got independence, but the war accelerated it. Many other countries, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Jordan, North Korea, South Korea, Philippines, Indonesia, all of them got independence within a few years of the Second World War. Basically, the people toughened by the war fought for freedom, and the European countries, with their diminished military power, could not hold on to colonies far away from home. Let me round off this session by talking about why is it important to study about Second World War. It's a war that ended more than 75 years ago. So why is it important? For many, reading or watching about war is interesting. It's interesting to follow the ups and downs of battles, the twists and turns, the change in fortunes of the different combatants. It's thrilling. And there is no shame in that. The human brain is wired like that, to see glory in violence. But it is very important to balance it with a healthy dose of skepticism, a healthy dose of information about the horrors of war. The Second World War caused directly deaths of more than 60 million people, more than 40 million of them civilians. Many more millions died in the years after from famine, malnutrition, hunger, and of course, specifically in the case of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, from genetic disorders. Of course, the worst act of the war being millions upon millions of Jews being put in concentration camps and later gassed and killed. This surpassed all the other mass massacres in history, even the one by Genghis Khan and his Mongols, or the Hindu massacres in Delhi by Timur. All these are indelibly marked in the minds of the generation that lived through it. The people who fought in the Second World War, romantically called the greatest generation, and their contemporaries, all remember it. But that generation has passed on or is passing on. Unless we take care, this horror, this memory may pass from the collective memory of the world. We owe it to us and to the future generations to make sure that they remember the follies of war. Thank you.